Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Varsity Weekly. I'm your host, Noelle Blumel, and alongside me is my co-anchor, Paul Schultz. We are both interns here at the Varsity Sports Show, but primarily serve the purpose as primary anchors for Varsity Weekly. But for the first time tonight, we are coming to you live.
That's right, Noelle. We're here at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication in downtown Phoenix in the Cronkite News Sports Bureau, where a lot of our interns, including myself and you, attend school.
That's right, we do attend school here, and if I remember correctly, Paul, we will be serving roles as broadcast reporters here in the Sports Bureau for our next step in the semesters to come. Is that accurate?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so 18 of our fellow interns this semester have been fulfilling many roles and opportunities that this internship has provided, from play-by-play broadcasters to color analysts, tech directors, production assistants. I mean, the list goes on, but mostly, covering youth, high school, college sports, and most importantly, here in Arizona. So, Paul, on this special edition of Varsity Weekly Live tonight, what can our viewers out there expect to see?
Well, Noelle, we've got a great variety of content, which includes pre-recorded packages, and even better, some of our interns are live with us in the studio to discuss the teams they've been able to cover all semester long.
That's right. We are lucky enough to have some of our wonderful interns here to discuss the teams they have covered all semester long live in studio. And right after the break, we're going to have our very own Elia Harriet, who covered the Saguaro Powerhouse High School football all season. So we'll hear from her after the break.
In 2019, the JV Sports Show podcast began with the idea of spotlighting young people in our community. In time, that podcast evolved into radio, television, and live stream, and through that evolution, new ideas have enhanced delivery, giving a stage to students both in front of and behind the microphone in Arizona and beyond. Thank you for supporting the Varsity Sports Show, now the Varsity Media Foundation, a 501c3 educational organization.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Once again, I am Noelle Blumel, and alongside me is one of our fellow interns, Elia Harriet, who served the role of a color analyst all semester long for Saguaro High School football. Elia, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm good. Excited.
Very exciting. Yes, we have a lot of exciting things going on with high school football, specifically with Saguaro, who are still alive, if I remember correctly. Semifinal game tomorrow matchup. But I want to backtrack a little bit about their whole season. They moved from 5A to 6A just this season. Tell me about their schedule and kind of how you saw their opponents, who specifically stood out, and how the team responded.
Yeah, right off the bat, Saguaro started this season off very strong, and starting off with the Powerhouse from New Jersey, a team I'm very familiar with in Bergen Catholic, and Bergen Catholic actually just won a state championship in New Jersey last week, so, Saguaro is starting off the season very strong. The SaberCats unfortunately lost that game, but the importance is, from those games, you gain that experience, you gain, what you learned. So the SaberCats started off the season a little bit, not how they would like, but and then it didn't get any easier going to Chandler, and then once again, right after that, going to Liberty. So, the SaberCats really had a tough schedule this year, and one of the toughest in the entire country as well. And they didn't really lose that Liberty game by much, only by 9 points. So it's really important to know that even though they've lost those games, that they've really grown this entire season.
Right, absolutely. And just so we make sure it's clear to the viewers, they played Liberty prior this season, and they're refacing them tomorrow. What kind of have you seen in the team grow up until this point that caused the loss back earlier in season against Liberty?
I think it's just the maturity of Devin Dampier, the quarterback. Gonna get a little bit into that as well. But another really big piece that Saguaro gained is Zacchaeus Cooper in the backfield with Devin Dampier alongside Jaden Matthews as well. And Zacchaeus Cooper was injured a lot this season, so he really stepped up huge, and he's really had a lot of really strong moments this season in the latter part, and he's actually a former Liberty player, so it's going to be really fun to see him play against his old team.
Who's the former Liberty player?
Zacchaeus Cooper.
Oh, he is. How funny is that? And so, backtracking to what you had mentioned about Dampier, he's leading the offense this whole season. He's a dual threat quarterback, everything. Can you just kind of talk about his performance and how you've seen him evolve this season as a quarterback?
I mean, Devin's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire state. And, you know, he's has over 2,000 passing yards, over 1,000 rushing yards. And Devin just can do it all for his team. When they need him to run, he's going to run not only to get that yardage, but he's going to go further. And he's had a few rushing touchdowns as well. And Devin, he's just, you know, like you said, a dual threat quarterback. And he can read that field very well. And he's got his receivers out wide that he can hit. So he's had a tremendous season, and it's going to be really exciting to see him at the University of New Mexico next year.
Absolutely, and college interest too. Wonderful to hear. Well, Elia, thank you so much for sharing your insight on the Saguaro High School football team, and best of luck with this next step. And so next up, we are keeping the SaberCat theme with a preview of Saguaro High School basketball. Our very own Ryan Blank and Michaela Nagel have the preview with that.
Hey everyone, it's Michaela Nagel here from the Varsity Sports Show, and Saguaro basketball is back in action. Last season they went 13-12, and this year they are ready to make their mark. Last week they lost to Flagstaff High School 73-68 in double overtime. Tonight is their home opener against Gilbert North as they get ready to face the season ahead. Ryan Blank was able to talk to Coach Ramirez about what they need to fix going forward in the environment of them playing on their own home court. Let's hear what he has to say about tonight's matchup.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Blank with the Varsity Sports Show alongside Saguaro boys basketball head coach Lucas Ramirez. And coach, already played a game against Flagstaff, lost in double overtime, but competitive game. What'd you learn from your team in your first game?
We learned that we don't quit. You know, we had a lot of grit. You know, we didn't give up. You know, for anyone that followed the game or was there, they know we got off to a hot start. And we let them hang around when we had an opportunity, I thought, to really blow it open. We didn't take advantage of that opportunity, so learning moment there. And then, you know, we also had a very poor third quarter offensively, really poor quarter. But we found a way to defensively get us back into the game. And again, just showing that no quit, grit, whatever you want to call it. You know, I told the guys we don't get rewarded for moral victories, but we showed a lot of who we were on the road in a tough environment. Fantastic crowd there. You know, it kind of felt like an old school game with their gym, the way it was set up. And, you know, just fighting through adversity, you know, early in the season. And that's all you want, you know, to show growth each game. So overall, proud of our effort, and then looking to bounce back tonight at Dysart, and then tomorrow night we have a really tough opponent in ALA Gilbert North. So again, I love our schedule. It's as tough as it's ever been since I've been here, but we welcome that challenge, and we got to fight through adversity, whether it's injuries, sickness. I mean, everyone's dealing with it in some way. So as long as we keep growing each game, then we'll be pleased with the progress.
And you mentioned you got a loaded weekend coming up. You got a couple games this week. What are your expectations following game one? You said you had a rough third quarter offensively, but defensively kept yourselves in it. What are some expectations for this week?
Just playing a complete 32-minute game. Hopefully it's no more than 32 minutes, because 2 overtimes was a lot for my health, but and I'm sure their health too. But no, I mean, all jokes aside, playing a 32-minute game and finishing the job. You know, we put ourselves in position in the first half, I think, to put Flagstaff away, and we didn't. So next time we're in that position, let's do it. And then also on top of it, just finishing close games, making free throws, getting stops when we need to. I mean, anything any coach would say at the end of games, little things that matter that are actually big things, not really little things. But, you know, we expect to have a tough opponent tonight in Dysart. We've played them 3 times in the last 3 years. They knocked us out of the postseason last year. So, you know, we have 6 returners. Hopefully those guys remember that feeling and what it feels like, you know, to go over there and you know, play at their place. We know what it feels like. But again, just looking to bounce back tonight. They're a good ball club, but, you know, I think we have the makeup to have a good night tonight and bounce back, and then end the week. Home opener, great environment, great crowd. It always feels good to play in your own gym. But ALA Gilbert North, they're battle tested already. You know, they played in a tournament prior to the regular season starting, and they beat some really big schools. You know, they might be a new school to 4A, but I tell you what, man, I've watched a lot of tape on them. I've seen them in person over the summer. They're well coached. They have tremendous ball players, and it'll be a great challenge for us to see where we're at against. I think as of right now, ALA Gilbert North is a team that could be an open division team.
Ryan and Michaela, thank you for that update on Saguaro basketball. We'll have coverage on the SaberCats all season long here on the Varsity Sports Show. Next up, we welcome Stos Zafiropoulos, who joins us in studio. Stos was the color analyst for Canyon View High School this season. Stos, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Paul. How you doing, man? Super happy to be on here today.
Pretty good. Stos, so Canyon View kind of started off their season slow. They had a rough start in the first couple of games. How were they able to kind of turn that around and eventually make their way to the playoffs as the season went on?
So they made it to the playoffs because they ended up finishing that season, Paul, at 6-4. And, they started off the season. They were 0-2. They finished the season with a huge 3-game winning streak. They were ranked 19 for about the final 2 weeks of the season, and the top 16 teams obviously make it into the playoffs. And they found their way in there after getting that 3-game win streak.
And leaders are such an important part of high school football, especially. Who were some of the guys that stood out most for this Jaguars team this year?
Well, first of all, Keegan Landis for sure. I mean, a big defensive leader for the Jaguars this season. He had 126 tackles, 21 tackles for loss, leading in both of those categories on the defensive end of the ball. And, I mean, Keegan, he always made big plays. He had a touchdown on the defensive side of the ball, first game of the season. Really just had his presence felt from the get-go, and he was always a leader for this team.
And on the offensive side of the ball, Canyon View was highlighted by a very dynamic rushing attack, you could say. And so what contributed to that for the most part this season?
So Canyon View, what's different about Canyon View than a lot of teams is they had 2 running backs that they used a lot. They had Caleb Lane, and then they had Matthew Sarazosa. And both of these guys are great running backs. Sarazosa, obviously more of a power back, while Lane, he's more of a elusive back. Both of them had over 85 carries this season, with both over 400 yards rushing. So really dynamic offense in that case, and as well with their quarterback, Bo Devins, rushing for just about 300 yards this season as well. So a lot of players that can make plays with their feet on this Jaguars offense.
And again, we mentioned the dominant performance of the defense this season. How would you say that positively affected their team this year?
Well, I mean, first of all, Canyon View 3 shutouts this season out of their 10 regular season games. So, I mean, all you got to do is put up a field goal or a safety and you win that game, you know what I mean? And I think that's just crazy that they were able to shut out 3 different teams this season. They also had a game against Willow Canyon, only allowed 3 points. Their team, they had 15 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball this season, which is a lot, almost 1.5 a game. 22 sacks for their team as well. So they were really getting in the backfield, causing pressure to the offense, and really just knew how to get things turning for their offense and kind of getting the momentum started for them on that side.
And another thing we saw from the Jaguars all season long, where you don't see it from a lot of high school teams, was trick plays. How were they able to be so successful on those trick plays this year?
So Justin Clark, their backup quarterback, is actually their punter as well. So that's something that really actually helped the Jaguars out a lot on trick plays. So they would run a lot of punt fakes, obviously, where you'd think they're punting the ball, but then they throw a deep shot. Actually, first play of the entire regular season was a trick play where it was a reverse flea flicker. And it was like an 80-yard touchdown. Me and Ryan Blank, we were just going crazy when that happened, because to open up a season on a trick play, it was tremendous.
Yeah, what a way to start the season. And as we talk about the great way they started the season, they're running the playoffs cut short, but they were kind of one of those teams we were on the bubble, I guess you could say, weren't sure if they were going to make the playoffs or not. But what did you see or what did you hear maybe from Ryan and from others about that playoff game that they had a tough loss in?
Yeah, so unfortunately I wasn't able to be at the playoff game, but they lost to Higley 49-12 in the first round. Higley was, I believe, the 3 seed, maybe the 4 seed, but either way, I mean, Canyon View, they found a way into the playoffs, which I think was just something really successful on their end. I mean, being ranked 19, like I said, going into the final 2 to 3 weeks of the season and just kind of staying there, they really needed some big wins. Their final game of the season, a 48-0 win against Agua Fria, a huge district rival. So getting that win as well really kind of just pushed them into the playoff talks, and they found themselves in the playoffs, and I think it was a really successful season for the Jaguars.
And I think one thing as we thank Stos for his time. One thing to note real quick is this Canyon View school, the whole school as a whole, has only been there for a couple years.
Yeah.
So how quickly they've built this program has been really impressive.
Yeah, it has been really impressive, and I think Coach Nick Garretts of Canyon View is doing a great job with that program. He really cares about the team. He cares about the coaching staff. He cares about his players. And Canyon View, obviously, you said just 3 years as a school, so it's really cool to see them come together as a team and fight their way back into the playoffs after making it for the first time last season.
All right, Stos Zafiropoulos, the color analyst, for Canyon View all season long. Stos, thanks for joining us in studio.
Thank you, Paul.
Now we turn to Jacob Carlisle. He'll recap the past football season for Higley High School.
Thank you, Noel. I am here with Higley Knights head coach Eddie Zuby. How are you today?
I'm doing good, thank you.
I have some questions here for you. What were your goals this season and did you achieve them?
We had goals of winning a state championship, so no, we haven't achieved them yet, but we're on our way.
You have a very dynamic offense. Jamar Malone II is in front of that, throwing 41 touchdown passes on the season. Why do you think you guys had so much success throwing the ball?
Just having really good players. It's not just Jamar. Our receivers are really good. Our offensive line giving them protection. So just having players that are willing to go out there and bust their hump.
Carter Hancock and Dominic Esposito both averaged over 100 yards receiving per game. What do you credit their success on offense?
Just being able to their speed, to be honest with you. They're both really fast kids, run track, play other sports. So I think that definitely helps them out in that situation.
Daxon Hall averaged over 100 rushing yards per game. What do you think the key to his success on the ground or in the run game for you guys was?
Definitely our offensive line, being able to protect and create holes for Dax, as well as, being a threat to throw the ball. Sometimes teams would not have as heavy as box as they would, so we were able to run it.
It's not all about offense. Defensive end Caleb Botticello had 10 sacks this year. How do you think he was able to do that, and how important is it to have a dominant defense?
It's very important to have a dominant defense, and Caleb is a really hard worker. He's just playing the calls that are given to him and doing the best to his ability. So he's a really quick twitch type of guy, gets off the ball quick and is relentless to the ball.
Are there any players that have surprised you this season, and do any have college interest?
We have a lot of kids that have college interest. I would say players that were surprising to me. There's a bunch of them. We had Kyle Parker as a corner, Andrew Zuby as a free safety, Jackson Sander, Jacob Pitts on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, Emmett Rhodes as offensive lineman, and Bodie Gracie to be able to come out and to do that stuff. So a lot of kids stepped up in great situations.
You guys played Desert Mountain tonight. How have you guys gone about preparing for the Wolves?
We just go about our business. They got to stop us is our kind of mentality. So we know what they do, and we have a game plan in place to go ahead and see if they can stop us.
Your first two playoff games are at home. How important is it to establish dominance in the first quarter tonight on the road?
Most definitely, right? You got to take the crowd out of it, and you just got to create momentum for yourself and your teammates at the high school level. That really helps with the kids' esteem, and momentum is a big thing in high school football.
Desert Mountain has only one game where they did not score more than 30 points. What do you guys plan to do to stop their offense?
Just kind of bend but don't break. Just make sure that they, that keep the ball in front of us. No big plays.
The Wolves' defensive end has 16.5 sacks this season. How important is it to protect Jamar Malone II?
That's the number one thing we have to do is protect Jamar.
How important is it to get off the field on third down tonight?
That'll be the difference in the game, right? Stopping their drives and not allowing them to continue to go. So it's a very important aspect.
Thank you, Coach Zuby, and good luck tonight.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Back to Nicole and Paul in the studio.
Once again, that was Jacob Carlisle with coverage of Higley High School football. Thanks for that, Jacob. And now, on the opposite end of the rivalry, we have our Desert Mountain correspondent here, Shane Fricky, with us. Shane, thank you for joining us. How are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be part of the live Varsity Weekly, and I'm excited for some great high school football tonight.
Absolutely. And speaking of high school football, you were the color analyst all season for the Wolves of Desert Mountain High School. They're facing Higley tonight, I believe. Yeah, at 7 o'clock tonight. facing Higley, semifinals. Can you give us a quick recap of the whole season, kind of how you've seen the Wolves evolve, and most recently, a recap of their game against Millennial last Friday?
Yeah, so the whole season, it's just, I think the thing that stands out the most is they're just a well-coached team. You can see that they don't make a lot of errors when they do have games that have a lot of penalties. You'll see Coach Conrad Hamilton is upset with them. I, as the color analyst, I interview him after every game, and half the games they've won by 21-plus points. I interview him, he'd just be like, there's picking apart. So he's never happy with a win, and I think that stayed with last week when they beat Millennium 17-7. It was a good win. I wouldn't say it was a great win. It was a little bit sloppy. They were able to play great on defense, only holding them to 7 points. They also had a safety, so the defense played well. Offensively, they played well. Drew Tapley, the quarterback, had 384 yards, and then his primary receiver was his brother, actually, Dylan Tapley, who had 8 receptions for 164 yards. So offensively, they played well. Defensively, that's kind of their bread and butter, is getting the ball, getting some bad field position for the opposition, and then getting their offense in some good field position.
Absolutely, and I actually had the opportunity to be a color analyst for them as well, and what a great dynamic it is between the Tapley brothers, wide receiver for the quarterback. But something interesting about Desert Mountain's team is they run 2 quarterbacks, right? Drew Tapley and Brady McDonough, but if I remember correctly, McDonough suffered an injury that was kind of set the team back. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, on their last game of the regular season before the playoffs, McDonough got injured versus Verado, and as you said, they kind of did run a 2-quarterback offense. Coming into the year, it seemed like it was Drew Tapley. He's the senior. He's a great pocket passer, can get the ball to any receiver on the field. And then McDonough just happened to kind of work his way into the starting lineup, and then they'd kind of switch off drives. And McDonough, he's great throwing the ball. He had 1,500 yards and 17 touchdowns passing, but he's really good running the ball. His main skill is being able to get out of the pocket when he needs to, scramble, pick up first downs whenever they want them. He had 710 yards, 5 touchdowns rushing. So for a quarterback, that just opens up the offense so much more. And Coach Hamilton always praised how good he was for the offense, not necessarily that he'd play the entire game. He only played about half the snaps, but he was so good to the offense, and it's a big loss for them. But as we saw last week, Drew Tapley is definitely capable of helping his team to get a win with his big game last week, and I'd expect another big game tonight.
What are some specific assets that Tapley brings to the team? Kind of obviously we know a quarterback has to be a huge leader for the team. Specific to him, what are the characteristics that make him a huge asset for their team?
Well, I think that the leadership is a big thing. He does strike himself as a good leader. He's very well spoken when I've talked to him, and so you can see that he has that quarterback mindset of being a leader. And then just throwing the ball, he has a super talented arm. He could throw the ball. He can zip it to his receivers when he needs to get it in fast. He can throw the ball really deep, so you see why Coach Hamilton likes him so much. Last game, his arm was a little bit too talented at times, and he'd overthrow his receivers, which helps them because Jack Freeberg, their number 1 receiver on the year, is super fast. He's able to break off these long touchdowns. So that dynamic, I mean, the dynamic with his brother is obviously going to be there, but the dynamic with Jack Freeberg, the other receiver, is there too. Freeberg had over 100 yards in the last game as well.
Right, absolutely. And real quick before I let you go, how is the Desert Mountains defense? What do they need to do to stop the hot Higley offense, as we heard from Jacob earlier? What do they need to do for victory tonight?
So yeah, Higley offense is playing really well right now, 94 points in the last 2 games. And so the defense is going to have to step up, but this is a defense that you want going against a hot offense. They held their opponents to only 13.2 points a game this entire season, and they really like to get after the quarterback. They have 49 sacks on the year. They're led by Nolan Clement, who was the Northeast Region Defensive Player of the Year for the 5A conference. He had 16.5 sacks for the team this year, which broke the single-season record for Desert Mountain, and he missed 2 or 3 games, so if he played the entire season, he potentially could have had over 20 sacks. And so it's going to be Nolan Clement leading that defensive line to get after the quarterback, not give him time to find his receivers deep down the field. And then they also have Dylan Tapley, who's great offensively. He's also a great safety for them, 7 interceptions in 12 games this year. So defensively, they're stacked at all fronts. We saw last week they put a lot of pressure, only led Millennium 7 points, and got a safety. And so I think that defensively is not going to be the problem. Special teams, they did struggle a little bit on giving the returner too many yards, so that's where they're going to have to work.
Absolutely. Well, Shane, thank you so much for your insight on Desert Mountain High School. They're facing Higley tonight in their semifinal match at 7 p.m. Next up, we have Cade Cameron with coverage of Notre Dame Prep's high school football team, who also have a semi-football playoff game tonight against Cactus High School.
We are a week away from the 5A state championship, but before the championship, there were 4 teams remaining, but more specifically, the Cactus Cobras and the Notre Dame Prep Saints. For this Notre Dame prep team, they're the number 1 seed going into this semifinal game against Cactus, the number 4 seed in the tournament so far. But for this Notre Dame prep Saints team, I think I only have 2 real big keys to success. First off, get attacking early. This Cactus team has won every game that they've only kept their opponent to 20 points or less. So if they can score early, then the Saints are going to be able to march their way into the 5A state championship game. My second key to success is continue to play the way they've played this entire season. This team was 9-1 in the regular season for a reason, and that was because they were relying very heavily on that passing attack game, especially with wide receiver Cooper Perry. Keep that up, and as mentioned, they'll find their way into the 5A state championship game. But with more on that, let's talk to head coach of the Notre Dame Prep Saints, Coach George Prelock. We are now joined by head coach of the Notre Dame Prep Saints, Coach George Prelock. Coach, first off, I want to congratulate you on a fantastic season so far. Going 9-1 in the regular season isn't an easy feat, so congratulations on that. But with that spectacular season that you've had, and for this team, has proven why they are the number 1 seed in the 5A bracket. With that being said, it seems like just the deeper into the playoffs the team goes, the more mentally challenging it can get, especially when that semifinal and championship title are added to that game. With that being said, what have been some of your biggest discussion points with your team this week to mentally prepare for them for this semifinal game?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, we want them to live in the moment, right? What we preached all year, you take it one practice at a time, one game at a time, one rep at practice at a time when we're in the game, one play at a time. And you just focus task at hand, try and block out all the other noise, but also understand how special it is to make it this far. Blessed to be here, obviously. A lot of teams would love to have this opportunity and be in this position. We're very excited to have that opportunity. We're very blessed to be here. So.
All right, then transitioning to your opponent this Friday against the Cactus Cobras. This is a team that has kept every opponent to 20 points or less in each of their wins. So what is your game plan offensively for this matchup?
Well, I mean, like anything else, you can't be sloppy with the football. I mean, their defense is extremely talented. They have athletes all over the place. Their front four and the defensive line is impressive to me. So like any game, we have to win the turnover battle. We got to get a positive yards. And as you know, 4 or 5 plays, big plays in the game determine the outcome of the game. We got to have 3 or 4 of them go our way. So that's kind of what the game plan is.
All right, then finally, for the fans watching at home, or maybe for some of the fans watching who aren't too familiar with your squad, what are your keys to success to win tonight and to coach Notre Dame Prep to a 5A state championship game berth?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, we just got to take it one play at a time. Our players know we've been preaching all year. There's 11 individual battles on the field. You have to win your individual battle. Now of those 11, you know, we got to at least win 8 of them, right? Because as you know, football is a team sport. We have to be working in unison. As I already stated earlier, you can't turn the ball over. If you turn the ball over in any game, it's going to cost you, especially a big game in the playoffs, a state semifinal game. Teams play better football, play perfect football as they advance. So it's important to cut out those mistakes and not have key penalties.
All right, Coach, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck tonight against Cactus.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for that, Cade. Although some of the high school playoffs are happening tonight, others have already wrapped up their season. Both the 2A and 3A divisions have wrapped up their championship games, and we have Ana de la Cruz in studio with a special live report, again, on both the 2A and 3A championships.
Hi everyone, my name is Ana de la Cruz, and like Paul mentioned, I will be talking about the 11-man 2A and 3A state championships. The 2A and 3A state championship games went on last Saturday, naming the Pima Rough Riders 2A champions and the Eastmark Firebirds 3A champions. If we dive in a little deeper into Pima's season, we'll see that Pima only lost 1 game in their 2022 season, and that was in their week 2 against the Thatcher Eagles. They then went on to win 8 straight and finish off their regular season 9-1. This team outscored their opponents 151-22 in the state playoffs, and in the championship game, they squared off against the Morenci Wildcats, where they took that game 59-19. They put up almost 40 points in every game during the season, and they went almost undefeated during the year, which is why this team came out on top. If we dive into Eastmark's season, Eastmark also lost their only game of the season in their very own Week 2, also against the Thatcher Eagles. They began their season early in Las Vegas, which is why they started on August 20th and not the 26th. They then had 8 straight wins after their Week 2 loss and made it undefeated in the playoffs. They put up an average of 48 points per game in the regular season and outscored their opponents 179 to 59 in the playoffs, leading them to their own trophy. In their championship game, they got revenge against the Eagles, beating them 42 to 21. In conclusion, both of these teams won state championships in their respective divisions. It was impressive seeing what they were able to do not only during the regular season, but being able to carry that into the playoffs and longer. Pressure did not get to any of these teams, and the numbers show it, plus the records. Both competed the same regardless of the situation. The pressure definitely never got to them. Not many people watch 11-man football, but year after year, these teams are putting up numbers and stats like these. If you're not a fan, I would recommend becoming a fan, because for me personally, this research turned me into a fan. Thank you guys, and back to you.
Anna, thank you so much for the coverage of the 2A and 3A football divisions. It's, as you mentioned, it's super important to highlight and how their seasons had transpired. And now moving up in the divisions, we have Dan Mayer with coverage of ALA Gilbert North, who have their semifinal playoff game in the 4A division tonight against Lake Havasu.
Hi all, I hope you are all enjoying Varsity Weekly Live. Huge shout out to Paul and Noel for putting this whole thing together. We are less than 1 hour away from the 2022 4A state semifinals presented by Barrow's Pizza. The number 13 Lake Havasu Knights will travel to Gilbert to take on the number 1 ranked American Leadership Academy, Gilbert North Eagles. ALA Gilbert North has looked strong all season, hosting a 10-2 record and finishing 4-0 in the 4A East Sky Division. Behind the leadership of head coach Randy Reisdorf, the Eagles are currently riding a 7-game win streak and have marched through the bracket as the 1 seed, defeating Arizona College Preps in the first round 48-10, and then the team handled their business in the quarterfinals, defeating Bradshaw Mountain 55-20. The high-scoring offense is led by senior quarterback Adam DeMonte. DeMonte, the 3-star quarterback committed to NAU, had an incredible season. He's considered one of the top dual-threat quarterbacks, if not the best, in the state of Arizona, and has thrown for over 4,000 yards and over 50 touchdown passes. In the playoffs, he went 17 for 338 yards and 5 touchdowns. Performances such as that one has led to the Arizona Cardinals naming him the 2022 Offensive Player of the Year. DeMonte's incredible season has also led to junior wide receiver Brandon Phelps to have an excellent season as well. He had finished his sophomore season with 11 touchdowns, but this season he has doubled that number, with 22 touchdowns and over 1,500 yards. The Eagles will look to do exactly what they've done all season in the semifinal game. With such a high-powered offense, don't be surprised to see a high-scoring game. But Lake Havasu did not get here on luck. The Knights have fought hard, upsetting the number 4 seed Poston Butte in round 1, and then in the quarterfinals beating the number 5 seed Yuma Catholic. Where the Eagles have gotten their yards through the air, the Knights have utilized the ground game. Senior Isaac Stopke is ranked 42nd in the state of Arizona and number 3 among all running backs. And he has proved his worth all season long. He averages about 190 yards a game and has 33 touchdowns on the season. He also has 12 plays this season of over 100 yards or more. The Drake commit also plays on the defensive side of the ball, where he has tallied up 22 tackles this year. With these two high-powered offenses, we should be in for a great semifinal game. The winner of this game will face the other side of the bracket between the number 6 Canyon del Oro and the number 2 Snowflake. The winner of these two games will play on December 9th at 4 p.m. at Sun Devil Stadium.
Thank you, Dan, for that. Best of luck to the Eagles in tonight's contest. And now we welcome in another in-studio guest, Jay Wilder Adams, who you've worked as a play-by-play broadcaster throughout the season for many games, as well as the color commentator for Horizon High School. So, Jay Wilder, thanks for joining us to talk some Huskies football.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Paul.
Now, Horizon was a team that had some struggles early on this season, so to what would you attribute those struggles early on?
I think it's a lot of things. A lot of things kind of came together, right? The team started 1-3. One thing I look at is just the overall leadership change, right? This is a team that won the state championship 5A last year, and in this year they had a lot of like juniors last year going into those leadership roles, and you combine that with the fact that this team started the year playing 4 non-section games, including playing against really good teams like Pinnacle and Hamilton, right? So I think the combination of figuring things out and playing against really good non-section opponents made it extra difficult to start the year. And plus, the defense really struggled, allowing 46 points per game those first 4 games. So yeah, it was a struggle all around at first.
Yeah, and as we looked at their schedule layout later on, they were able to kind of turn it around and eventually reach the playoffs. So what changes did you see them make that may have given them some more success throughout the season?
You know, like I said in the beginning, some of the struggle, like they started putting it together, right? It felt like the team had a stronger identity, especially on the ground, where you had multiple running backs. You had Anthony Segura and Bodie Zamorano, a freshman, who put it together throughout the season. The defense got significantly better. Like the rest of the way through game 5 to the end, they only allowed 18.1 points per game. So the defense got way better. And, you know, I talked about Zamorano. He started to really develop, didn't play much to start the year, but then he got more and more and more reps. And Kate always told me, the play-by-play commentator for Horizon, like, this is a second-half team. And I think as the season went on, we saw it, I think, glimpses against Cactus Shadows early. Like, this is a really, really good second-half team that is really clutch, and they put together some pretty big plays in pretty big moments.
And when we see teams have success, sustained success throughout the season, maybe there's some trends that might come along with that. So what maybe were some of those trends that you saw from this team over the course of the season?
You know, the game that really felt like it changed was against Higley. It was a 15-12 game, right? It was just they gutted that out. The defense was really struggling at that time. So playing against a really good opponent and keeping them to 15 points, it led to a domino effect, right? So they went 4 straight games with allowing less than 20 points per game. And, you know, Zamorano really came into his own. It just felt like everybody came together. Rowan Funk and Zordani were doing incredibly well as well. So, you know, it just felt like everything came together in the running game, defensively, you know, leadership, all of that.
And finally, we look ahead to next season. Now that their season is over, what are you looking to see from this team, the Horizon Huskies, in seasons to come?
You know, similar to last year, it's a lot of change again. They had 19 seniors this year, including some really critical pieces. Matthew Klopfenstein, the number 9 ranked player in the entire state, going to Baylor next year. You had Cole Linyard. You had, you know, Cody Nutton, who's the top lineman of the year through the Varsity Sports Show. You had a ton of talented guys, and also, you know, that's going to change, but you also have a lot of young pieces. It's a running team. They have Anthony Segura. They still got Bodie Zamorano. You got Kenyon Floyd, one of the best kickers in the entire state. You know, Hudson Miller. They got a lot of guys who have a lot of talent. Or not, Hudson Miller is a senior. He's one of the key pieces leaving. I was referring to Carson Kolb, you know, an incredible defensive player. He's going to be here next year. So they got a lot of pieces. I trust Coach Andy Litton because, you know, he has that resume. He's put it together at schools like Marana and Tucson, and he's won a state championship. So I trust the coach and I trust the talent.
And you mentioned Coach Andy Litton, who we've talked to and who you've had the chance to talk to many times throughout the season. What do you think are things that he does that maybe stand out compared to other coaches that have helped this team have such success?
You know, the nice thing about being a color analyst is I am able to, you know, watch not only, I don't even only get to talk to him post game, but I get to watch the huddles, and you can just see how bought in the players are. He is a fantastic culture builder and is a very smart football mind on top of it, maximizing his players all around him. And I think football, it's over 50% culture building when you're talking good football teams, and he knows how to do that, which is why you should be really optimistic if you're a Huskies fan.
And you mentioned we had some seniors leaving and some guys that are maybe looking to step up and fill those roles next year. So what do you see as far as building that culture back? What do you think? I mean, they've had a pretty good season to build on this year. So, I mean, what's the next step for this team?
You know, we talked about it, right? This team built an identity running the football offensively. They had multiple running backs average over 50 rushing yards per game. Those 2 running backs are back, right? So they have that identity on top of them. They got a really good specials team unit. They got a really good defense, and they got a lot of guys who they're very excited about in terms of potential going into next year. So they have not very much worries about the talent level that they can, you know, groom, put together. And, you know, there's going to be a transition with the leadership. Losing guys like Klopfenstein is a big loss, but they feel ready for it.
All right, Jay Wilder, thank you so much for joining us here in studio. And next up, we'll hear from Aiden Richmond, who gives us a look at the 6A semifinal matchup for Highland High School.
Here to give you the overview of an exciting 6A semifinal matchup that myself and much of the equipment behind me are likely currently at, just waiting for kickoff. I'm, of course, talking about the matchup between the 6-seeded Red Mountain Mountain Lions and the 2-seeded Highland Hawks. The Mountain Lions are coming off a season where they managed a 4-4 conference record, including a 3-1 regional showing. Meanwhile, Highland is coming off a 6-2 conference record with a similar 3-1 regional record. One of the first things that I noticed, or anyone will notice looking at this matchup, was that on November 4th, these two teams met just about a month prior. In that game, the Highland Hawks got the better of the Mountain Lions by a score of 17-14. But of course, in this rematch, the stakes are much higher, and this matchup in Gilbert will determine who gets the golden ticket to a 6A state title appearance. The Mountain Lions started their playoff run with a high-scoring win over Brophy in the first round. They heavily benefited from their running game to pull away 45-38 in that game. And then they beat the Mesa Jackrabbits handily in the quarterfinals with a score of 49-10. If Red Mountain really wants to pull off this victory, it will be super critical that they can maintain that phenomenal run game, which has run through their senior running back Lennox Lawson primarily. If he can average 7 yards or more per carry, which he has in the past 3 games, it's super easy to see how Red Mountain can take control of the clock and in turn take control of the game itself here. Meanwhile, for the Hawks, the story is actually quite similar. A very rush-focused offense that has gotten them past the Perry Pumas first in the first round with a dominating 57-22 win, and then they followed it up with a close, low-scoring affair against Sal Point Catholic, but they managed to pull it out 14-10. And in that game, both their touchdowns came from the ground game. In their game against Perry, most of their touchdowns came from running. So, on top of trying to match the run game that I think we should all expect to see out of Red Mountain, I think one thing that the Highland has really going for them is they've had a phenomenal defense this year. They've had great consistency. They've only given up more than 20 points twice this year, once against Perry, once much earlier in the year. If that defense can stay consistent, if they can keep this a low-scoring game and really make it a difficult affair, I think that it's going to be a really interesting game. I think I would anticipate a whole lot of running. I anticipate whoever wins at the line on both sides of the ball is going to ultimately win this game. But regardless, it's a super exciting matchup. I'm extremely excited to see these teams in action in just a minute. But in the meantime, my peers have plenty of show left, so stay tuned, and I'll kick it back to everyone live at the Sports Bureau. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Aiden. And now before we get into our last live interview segment, let's hear from our very own Aaron Herpy, who had the pleasure of being a color analyst for the Corona del Sol Aztecs football team this whole past season. And despite their season ending earlier than they had hoped for against Mesa High School in the first round of 6A playoffs, Aaron has the recap.
Hey guys, it's Aaron Herpy, and Corona del Sol had a heartbreak end to their season, but don't be fooled, there's a lot to talk about with this team. The Aztecs brought in a new head coach this season with Jake Barrow, and there was a lot of unknown for what to expect from this program. Well, they definitely met those expectations. They finished 8-3 this season as well as winning their division. The first game of the season against Mesa was rocky, but their strong finish proved that the Aztecs were going to be a breakthrough team. They were led by quarterback Connor Ackerley on offense with loads of options to make those big plays. As the season went on, though, they were riddled with injuries. Owen Jansen had a breakthrough first game for the Aztecs, but a season-ending injury put them down a top receiver. The rest of the Aztecs stepped up, like Cruz Swearingen, Zuri Glenn, Raiden Vinesbright, and Jonathan Kubat. Raiden Vinesbright led the team in receiving yards per game at 84.6, followed by Glenn at 65. Kubat averaged 83.8 yards per game, making a big impact in the run game. Now, we are just talking about offense. Moving over to defense, Elijah Byrne had a big season with 7.1 tackles per game and 3 interceptions, while Tristan Schaefer led the team with 6 sacks along with Keona Pete, Trey Fanene, and Jedediah Maurer helping along. Let's not forget probably one of the best special teams in the state. The dynamic team of kicker Carson Kiefer and punter Malcolm Flynn put the opponents into tough situations. Flynn averages 41 yards per punt, while Kiefer has over 3,000 kickoff yards. And he has a touchdown. Returner Kayvon Thomas had a great season, averaging a great amount of yards per kickoff return. While hearing all these stats is great, let's look at some of the Aztecs' top plays this season. The Aztecs finished their season in heartbreak after number 3 ranked Aztecs hosted the former opponent, the Mesa Jackrabbits. Both teams squared off in the beginning of the season, but both teams have grown since then. Connor Ackley was back in his first game after injuring his ankle, and there was high hopes for the team. They started off slow, but were able to catch him in the fourth quarter. But sadly, it was not enough for them as they were upset by the Jackrabbits. While it was a sad end of the season, the future looks bright for the program. The team had players' visits to big schools like U of A, ASU, Air Force, and even Yale. The Aztecs even had some offers coming in, including a receiver to look out for. Starting off, we have number 7, the senior kicker Carson Kiefer, who has an offer from Arizona State. Next up, number 77, Jake Carbajal, is committed to Northern State University. After that, 56, Keona Pete has offers from Fort Valley State, John C. Smith University, Lincoln University, and Black Hills State. Then we have sophomore wide receiver Raiden Vinesbright, who has offers from Colorado State and University of Arizona. He received all of those offers just this week. Next is Jonathan Kubat, who has offers from Arizona Christian and Minnesota Duluth. Next, we have Trey Fanene, who has offers from Lewis and Clark, Puget Sound, and Arizona Christian. Tristan Shaver has offers from Graceland, Lewis and Clark, Crown College, and Arizona Christian. And last but not least, Matthew Orthman has offers from Lake Forest, UW River Falls, Lewis and Clark, South Dakota, Concordia, and Arizona Christian. While their season ended so quickly, the Aztecs will be a force next year. While they lose a lot of starters, they still have some big returning players like Connor Ackerley, Raiden Vinesbright, and Zuri Glenn. Make sure you watch out for the Aztecs, as I'm sure their road for playoff redemption will be big next season. This has been Erin Herbie with the Corona del Sol Aztec Report. Back to you, Paula Noel.
Thank you, Erin. And last but certainly not least, we have coverage of our HJCAC football conference that Paul and I actually had the opportunity to call. I believe you were play-by-play, I was color analyst, one specific game this past season, right?
Yeah, no, we got to call the Gila Riverhawks game. They ended up being the conference champions, funny enough.
Yes.
And joining us to discuss the HJCAC, we have Shai Gara. Shai, you've been the voice of Corona del Sol Aztec football all season long as the play-by-play commentator, as well as a commentator in a couple of different roles for the HJCAC this year. Thanks for being here, Shai.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
First off, we've all had a chance to kind of watch and commentate the HJCAC conference throughout the year. And so from your perspective, what do you think made these games so enjoyable to watch?
Well, Paul, that's a great question. And there's a lot of good answers to this question. But I would have to say the best part about the HJCAC, the thing that makes it the most fun to watch, is just the intensity, energy, and passion that goes into the game. Every player really wants it so bad, and the chemistry between the players, everything they put into the game, you can just tell that they put their entire heart and everything, their heart and soul into the game. They want it so bad, and I think that passion for the game, you see it in every play. Every tackle is made with 100% passion, conviction, authority, and that's what I love about it, the intensity that comes from the passion of each player.
And where do you think that passion initially stems from? Obviously, you know, we've all been around sports, we've been athletes, we know the ultimate goal is always to win, but why this conference specifically? Are you seeing that from these players? Like, what is your insight on that?
Well, I would say that the HJCAC is a great opportunity for players that maybe don't have the most lucrative Division I offers coming out of high school, who want to be able to continue their craft, and maybe they don't have those offers to show themselves, but they know that this is an opportunity for them to potentially get to a higher level and increase or continue to play football at a high level. So I think that they're really just taking advantage of this opportunity that they're getting, and I think they love the game of football, and the fact that they have this opportunity, they're going to put everything into it to make the most of it.
Yeah, and it seems like each team may have had one or two big stars that you can kind of pinpoint throughout the season who could make a big impact at any game during the season. But if you had to pick a couple of the best players in the conference as a whole this season, who would it be?
Well, that's a tough question, but honestly, I couldn't just pick one. Obviously, there's so many great players, but I have a tie between two great quarterbacks. I have Trier Edwards of the Salt River Scorpions, and I have Jaden Cunningham of the Papago Pumas. These are two terrific athletic quarterbacks, dual threat quarterbacks that I have thoroughly enjoyed watching this season. You start with Jaden Cunningham, and he's kind of the taller prototype of quarterback. I mean, he is tough to tackle because he has great speed, acceleration, athleticism, and he can basically make every throw in the book, and he really gives it his all on every play. You have to be careful because he can get out of the pocket, scramble, he can dive. I mean, he puts everything on the line. And then you have Trier Edwards, who's also a dual threat quarterback. And I kind of compare him to a Kyler Murray prototype. Not the tallest guy, but really physical. His strength is underrated. And he's just able to use his physicality, use his improv to make plays with his legs, and also, just like Cunningham, he's a great thrower of the football. So I've loved watching both of them the entire season.
Absolutely, and actually one of my first games that I called as a color analyst was for the Pumas, Jaden Cunningham, calling his name every other second. But that game specifically, I think I was with Jay Wilder-Adams, and we made a pun about how many penalties they were. Like, we were in Flagstaff, because of how many flags there were. But, and that was one of the key moments that stood out to me. But for you and your experience covering HJCAC, what are some highlights and favorite moments that stick out to you?
Okay, I would have to say there was one game in particular. So many entertaining games, but for me, easily, there was one game that happened between these two teams, between the Scorpions and Pumas, between Edwards and Cunningham. It was on November 5th, which was a Saturday, of course, that's when they play their games. It was a battle of a game, and it was a sloppy game. I mean, the Scorpions turned the ball over 6 times. They were down 3 possessions in the fourth quarter, and somehow they battled back against the Pumas. The game came down to one play. They were down 29-26 to the Pumas, and Trier Edwards, with literally 2 seconds on the clock running, he had a snap to him, and he tried to take it into the end zone himself, was fearless, and a lot of people thought he got in for the game-winning touchdown as the clock expired, including us. Everyone in the press box thought he scored the game-winning touchdown, but the referees said that he was short, and we couldn't, from looking at the replay, determine if he actually made it or not, so it's really a gray area, but that was one of the most entertaining games I think I've ever seen.
And I can't imagine, the passion that we've already mentioned that goes on those sidelines. I can't imagine what the coaches and what the players thought of that after the game.
Man,
but, we talk about just briefly the passion these teams have, and you see, as Noel mentioned, the penalties and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. It's truly
great to
a
watch.
one-of-a-kind experience watching this football team.
Yeah, specifically here in Arizona for community college football. But overall, Shai, thank you so much for joining us today, once again for being here and highlighting the HJCAC conference. And right after this, we will have our final close of the show.
Chris Scott of RE/MAX is Central Oregon's best realtor for anyone thinking of a vacation home or relocation. He's our very own born and raised Phoenician who moved his family to Central Oregon nearly 15 years ago. Contact Chris if you're thinking of exploring beautiful Central Oregon. It truly is living at its best. 541-999-5614. Proud partner of the Varsity Sports Shows, it's Dylan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Varsity Weekly Live. We are joined here by Vince DeLisio, none other, the big man of Varsity Sports Show, founder, the one who has provided all 18 of us this semester with these opportunities. Vince, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
It was 19, actually,
19.
But I'm great. Thank you so much for this opportunity to sit here with you guys to monitor and to just provide a platform for this amazing work you guys have done all semester long. It's been I'm speechless right now. I probably shouldn't even be here, but I'm just so excited. And so thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And so, Vince, can you just kind of give our viewers out there a little overview of the opportunities that this platform and Varsity Sports Show provides?
Okay, so let's talk specifically about this semester, because this semester I felt like we made the biggest impact. When we started this thing a couple of years ago, it was what we brand as the mothership. That was the radio show, the Varsity Sports Show on Saturday mornings. We've since expanded. We're doing live streaming now, and that's continued to grow. We came into this season with 16 Cronkite interns. Right at the beginning of the semester, there were 3 more that literally fell into our lap by the names of present company here, Noel, Paul, and then, of course, Dan Marr. And they really completed our team. It was a rigorous process to screen everything, to put you guys in the right position and to be successful, ultimately, is what it came down to. And we had a big group of people that had never worked together before, that had never so much as called a game, done a live sports broadcast, and you came out on top, champions. It was amazing work, and I couldn't be more prouder of everything you did. That's what we do. We provide a platform. We provide a platform for students that wish to get involved in broadcast journalism, in production of events. We have producers that are very good behind the mic, behind the camera, and with editing, and so there are opportunities abound to join our crew.
Absolutely, and I know, Vince, you very much beat it into our heads this whole semester that it's a grind. It's a grind. Paul, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure you agree. All 19 of us have been through it this semester, but I can speak for all of us when I say that these opportunities that it's provided are like no other. Just the hands-on access in undergrad. Paul, can you tell me a little bit about your experience and what you've witnessed?
Well, I'll be honest. When I first jumped on the crew, I was just kind of exploring different options and wasn't sure about the whole being an intern sort of thing. I talked to Vince about originally coming on just as a secondary hand, so to speak. But as we kind of got underway, I realized, the workload was a lot, but there's a lot of opportunities to try new things. That was the biggest, and play-by-play and color and all this sort of stuff that I've been able to do. Hosting Varsity Weekly. I mean, the opportunities have been endless, and really, it's a
It's
the
a grind,
internship as a whole, I've been extremely grateful for.
Absolutely, and I agree. The same way that I got involved in this initially, I had a jam-packed schedule already for the fall semester, but we're both seniors this year. It's kind of coming down to the wire. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So I had initially reached out to be a freelance camera operator, and then Vince, very persistently but gratefully that he did, was like, "You got to come on as an intern to gain broadcast experience." And just that experience alone, I know I sound like a broken record, but it really is like no other, and just super grateful for these opportunities to be able to do this, add to our reel, and pursue our next steps, as I know all the two of us here, the rest of the 17, are planning to do in the semesters to come. But yeah, any last final thoughts, Paul?
I mean, it's just, again, I sound like a broken record too, but it's just been an incredible experience, and all the opportunities we've had have been phenomenal. And I know I've personally grown just with my skill set over the course of the semester. I know we mentioned a couple weeks ago, just to put you on the spot a little bit, or in the spotlight, Coach Conrad Hamilton, when he talked to you after the Desert Mountain game, said one of the best interviews he's ever done. So,
yes.
I mean,
well, it has been a great opportunity to expand our skill set, but we wish the best of luck to all of our interns, our team out there in what's to come for this future. But for the last time, I'm Noelle Blumel.
And I'm Paul Schultz.
And go Varsity.
Go Varsity.